kayena manasa.
Evam kayena manasa.
Vachasacha manogatam.
Vachasacha manogatam.
Vicharya mano bhagavan.
Vicharya mano bhagavan.
Bhaktimat paricharya.
Bhaktimat paricharya.
Sam amayinam samyam.
Samainam samya.
Vajatam bhagavardhanam.
Vajatam bhagavardhanam.
Shreyodisatyapi matam.
Shreyodisatyapi.
Yadharmadishu jehinam.
Dharmajati.
Evam kayena manasa.
Evam kayena manasa.
Vachasacha manogatam.
Vachasacha manogatam.
Vicharya mano bhagavan.
Bhaktimat paricharya. Sammayinam samyak. Bhajatam bhavavardhanaha. Shreyodishatyavimatam. Yadharmadishu dehinam. Evam kayena manasa. Vachasacha manogatam. Paricharyamana bhagavan. Bhaktimat paricharya. Paricharyamana bhagavan. Bhaktimat paricharya. Sammayinam samyak. Bhajatam bhavavardhanam. Shreyodishatyavimatam. Yadharmadishu dehinam.
Ladies,
Evam kayena manasa. Vachasacha manogatam. Paricharyamana bhagavan. Bhaktimat paricharya. Sammayinam samyak. Bhajatam bhavavardhanam. Shreyodishatyavimatam. Yadharmadishu dehinam.
evam das kayena
Kayena.
by the body,
By the body.
manasa
Manasa.
mind,
By the mind.
varchasa
Vachasa.
by the words,
By the words.
sha
Sha.
also,
Also.
managatam
Managatam.
simply by thinking of the Lord,
Simply by thinking of the Lord.
Paricharyamanaha,
Paricharyamana.
engaged in devotional service.
Engaged in devotional service.
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan.
the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Bhaktimat,
Bhaktimat.
according to the regulative principles of devotional service.
According to the regular principles of devotional service.
Vicharya, by worshiping the Lord.
By worshiping the Lord.
Sam, of the devotee.
Amayinam.
who is sincere and serious.
Who is sincere and serious.
Samyak,
Samyak.
perfectly.
perfectly.
Bhāgavatam, engaged in devotional service.
Engaged in devotional service.
Bhāgavatam, the Lord
The Lord,
who increases the ecstasy of the devotee.
who increases the ecstasy of the devotee.
Shreya, ultimate goal.
Ultimate goal.
Visati,
Visati,
bestows.
bestows.
Abhimatam, desire.
Desire.
Yat, as they are.
As they are.
Dharma adishu, regarding spiritual life
Regarding spiritual life
and economic development.
and economic development.
Dehinam, of the conditioned soul.
Of the conditioned souls.
Translation. Again, this is Narada Muni instructing the Dhruva Maharaj on how to render devotional service to attract the attention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to help him to achieve his goals that he had set out in the beginning, which we'll see in the next chapter. We have a change of heart after meeting the Lord. Anyone who thus engages in the devotional service of the Lord seriously and sincerely with his mind, words, and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If a devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation from the material world, he is awarded these results. Please repeat. Anyone who thus engages in the devotional service of the Lord, seriously and sincerely, with his mind, words, and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If a devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification or liberation, let me say that's a big mouthful. Material religiosity,
Economic development,
sense gratification, or liberation.
from the material world,
he
he is awarded these results.
is awarded results.
Report by his divine grace, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Savior of the whole universe, Savior of the most fallen, Jagadguru, Patita Pavana, Prabhupada. Devotional service is so potent that one who renders devotional service can receive whatever he likes as a benediction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conditioned souls are very much attached to the material world, and thus by performing religious rites, they want the material benefits known as Dharma and Artha. Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Vishram Stapitam Dena Bhutale Svaya Rupa Kajamayam Ati Svakatanti. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Davatamaham Sri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Savajatam Sadhana Ramakanditam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Purijna Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagita Sri Vishaka becomes Cha Sri Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Kanchana Gauranga Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sate Devi Manamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Visasedrubhya Devacha Itanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Gadadhar, Shri Vasant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama. Divyamanduranya Kalpajumada, Śrimad Ratnagara, Srinasanasto, Śrimad Radha, Shri Govindadeva, Prastavavi, Savyamana, Smarami. The temple of jewels underneath the desire trees of Vrindavan, seated upon an effulgent throne, the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, are served by their most beloved confidential associates. We beg to offer our respectful to them. Narada Muni, in the previous verse, as instructed Dhruva Maharaj, one should worship, follow in the footsteps of previous devotees regarding how to worship the Supreme Lord, to the prescribed paraphernalia. Prabhupada, in describing the process of Vandanam, offering prayers, that if we accept the prayers of the predecessor acharyas and emulate or empathize, and make those feelings that are expressed by the acharyas our own, then that is the best way to approach the Supreme Lord, especially in the beginning stages. We cannot make up or concoct or imagine that we are in a relationship with the Lord when actually we're in a very preliminary stage of purification and hopeful elevation and advancement. Srila Prabhupada in particular has recommended the prayers of Srila Narottam Das Thakur and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Indeed, the first ISKCON songbook, which was put together in 1972, was the majority of the prayers of these two great personalities. Prabhupada said that of the prayers of Narottam Das Thakur, there is good as Vedic evidence. Even though they are composed in simple language, the meaning of these songs are very deep and profound. So, in yesterday's verse, Prabhupada directed our attention to the Avanti Brahmin, whose story is told at length in the Nectar of Devotion, that he was not rich. I'm sorry, it's not the Avanti Brahmin, different personality, South Indian Brahmin, but he wanted to worship the Lord with great opulence, with all varieties of paraphernalia, and he was doing so in his mind, in a very detailed way, in a very elaborate way, for a very, very, very long time. And ultimately, at a certain point, the Lord of Vaikuntha, Lord Narayan, was pleased with his devotional service, and it was defying the laws of nature that he was thinking to cook very wonderful sweet rice in his mind. And after making the offering, he thought, oh, it is just fresh off the stove and the fire. It must be too hot. So he touched the sweet rice in his mind, Manasi Seva, and his finger, much to his astonishment, was burned. And he woke from his meditation. At that time, Lord Narayan was very much amused and laughing in Vaikuntha, and Lakshmi Devi, his constant companion, seated by his side, was wondering what this was all about, and he called the Brahmin back home, back to Godhead. The liberal nature of devotional service. Now, this example given here, in Nectar Devotion, it shows one utilizing the objects, the material elements of this world to render service to the Lord. What is most wanted and desired by the Lord but most especially in this Kali Yuga, as shown to us by the Yuga Avatar, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. He wanted to preach and expand the Krishna consciousness movement for the benefit of all the fallen conditioned souls. It's described in one place that Kali Yuga, the living entities, are in a very, very precarious situation. And we understand that every living entity is eternal, so that the people we see in Kali Yuga before us, they're not just Kali Yuga people, but they existed in the Dwapara Yuga, in the Treta Yuga, and even in the Satya Yuga. One description of Kali Yuga is the opportunity for the fallen conditioned soul, or for the soul who has decided to turn away from Krishna's service to, in a sense, try to enjoy separately by imagining oneself to be the enjoyer, the controller, the owner, that here is the opportunity in Kali Yuga to fully eat and embrace the bitter fruits of impiety and sinful life. And we see that people in general, whatever is the atmosphere, whatever is the status quo, what everybody else is going along with, they're going to do that. They don't want to stand out. So if everyone else, and then you have the media promoting that this is the way to think, this is the way to act, you know, like people are paid fabulous amounts of money to come up with advertising schemes to try to influence people to think a certain way, to desire in a certain way. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wants his devotees to, within their mind, desire. Along with desire, we desire to, let's say here locally, we desire to build up this temple. We have the property next door, we want to desire, and of course, not just our thinking is going to make that happen, like the Brahman. We're not going to, maybe, by miracle, one day we all wake up the next morning, there's a grand 17-story building next door. But I think all of us would have to be very, very sincere in our mental and prayerful thought. But the endeavor to make it happen, Prabhupada said, his spiritual master, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta, I wish that all good-hearted members of this Gaudiya Math are prepared to shed countless gallons of blood for each and every individual soul on this planet. In describing the devotional service of Maharaj Ambarish in the 4th chapter of the 9th canto, he was engaged in elaborate deity worship and so much paraphernalia. And Prabhupada describes that the austerity to keep up the deity worship, so many offerings a day, bathing and dressing, cooking, so much paraphernalia, is certainly an austerity. Similarly, the austerity to preach to atheistic men, to prepare literature and go door to door is an austerity. Such austerity is necessary because it brings us to the position of pure devotional service. Similarly, in the 2nd chapter of the 10th canto, prayers to Lord Krishna in the womb of Mother Devaki, the demigods are glorifying the devotees that those who cause others to hear and chant about your glories. And Prabhupada writes at the end of the purport the very important and famous glorification of transcendental book distribution. The words kriyasu, by manual labor or work, are very important in this connection. In our Krishna consciousness movement, all our activities are centered around distributing Krishna literature. I believe it's in that purport. By inducing someone to take Krishna literature, they will become a devotee one day. Srila Prabhupada's entire mission was to come to this world to save the fallen conditioned souls. The horoscope on the very day of his birth. At the age of 70, this child will cross the ocean, become a great exponent of religion, and open up 108 temples. Prabhupada was very reticent, very disinclined to talk about himself or hint what to speak of, reveal his actual position. But in one conversation with some of his close disciples, he said that he was in the spiritual world, and Krishna asked him to come down to this material world. And the only thing that Krishna asked him to do was to write his books. You go down and write books, and I will do everything else. And Prabhupada protested, I don't want to go there, it's a very dirty place. And Krishna re-stressed the point, and Prabhupada accepted. I would listen to I think it was the disciple sangha that you gave just recently in a high-rise there over on Deep Avenue. And we were discussing the protection of Krishna, Yoga Shema Mahamyama. Krishna, that's his special mission. He really likes to protect his devotees who are engaged in his devotional service. So, at the same time, there is a very real-life, seemingly struggle that goes on. But at the same time, the success is guaranteed. We just took devotees to see Prabhupada's pastime places on the Upper West Side. Prabhupada arrived in New York City the third week of October 1965 after spending 1 month in Butler, Pennsylvania, and a week of, he went to a college called Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, which is in eastern Pennsylvania. And then he went to one of the important Ivy League schools, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where, as a side note, a 21-year-old Ravindra Swarup saw Srila Prabhupada walking across the campus. And then later, when he came to Krishna consciousness, formally he understood that he had seen Srila Prabhupada in October 1965. And Prabhupada had only one contact in New York City, the Mayavadi impersonalist yogi, Dr. Mishra, who had done quite well for himself. Kind of the hip people called such a person an uptown swami, because he exploited the sentiments of rich Upper West Side New Yorkers and gave them little partial snippets of philosophy and yoga, and they gave him a lot of money. He was living in a penthouse apartment on the 14th floor overlooking the Hudson River, 33 Riverside Drive. In the beginning, he gave Prabhupada a room all to himself. And it's described that when it became inconvenient to maintain Prabhupada in his penthouse apartment, he shifted him to his windowless, showerless, kitchenless Hatha Yoga Studio, 3 avenue blocks and 3 regular blocks away. This was at the beginning of November. 1 week before the 9th November, Friday night, 1965 blackout, which was the entire eastern seaboard and 3 Canadian provinces. Tens of millions of people were out of power from rush hour, 5 o'clock in the evening until 7 o'clock the next morning. Prabhupada was in a windowless room. And as one from India, understanding how there's blackouts in India, was a little surprised at the same thing here in America. But one of Mishra's students was sent over with some fruit and some candles. And he told the Prabhupada the serious nature of such a blackout. For example, 800,000 people trapped in the subway. How would you like to be trapped in the subway car at rush hour, packed with people, with no power and no light for 12 or 14 hours? And Prabhupada had to walk back and forth this distance all the way until mid-April, when he finally moved by the grace of one Harvey Cohn, who allowed him to stay in his artist-in-resident loft, which was basically an entire floor of a pre-war walk-up building, which had been used as like a factory kind of sweatshop back in the Gilded Age. But at that time, it's right in the Bowery. It was quite the destitute neighborhood, so to attract anybody of any kind would pay any amount of money, artists and musicians. That was the space. So from the beginning of November, December, January, February, March, until mid-April, Prabhupada had to walk back and forth to shower and to cook. And there were 3 or 4 very powerful blizzards that winter. 26 inches of snow, temperatures 10 degrees. And if you read in Prabhupada's diary, which has been published entitled The Beginning, that I could not go out today for cooking and bathing because of heavy snowfall. Along the walk from 100 West 72nd Street, which is the corner of Columbus Avenue, which is 1 block from Central Park, to Amsterdam, a very long block, and then West End Avenue, and then down to Riverside Drive, he passed 143 West 72nd Street, a vacant 2-story and basement building. And if you've read the Prabhupada Lilamrita, the chapters Struggling Alone, and it will not be possible to assist you, he wanted to make that the first Radha Krishna temple in the United States, in New York City. That building has been lying vacant for the past year and a half. I'm just going to put it out there. Unfortunately, she Radha Govinda and the devotees. This should please be on ISKCON's to-do list to take that building. If not, buy it outright, lease it, and it'll be we could call it Bhakti Center LES, Lower East Side, Bhakti Center Upper West Side. It's right in the business district. And to prove that it's in a very important place, just about 200 yards down the street is a Trader Joe's. So, slowly but surely, Prabhupada's writing to his godbrothers. He had a friend, a very wealthy Gujarati industrialist, Padampat Singhania. Slowly but surely, they stopped writing him. Seeing him from a distance, a tiny figure walking Manhattan streets and avenues, among many other tiny figures, a foreigner whose visa had almost run out. We come upon only the external appearance of Srila Prabhupada. These days of struggle were real enough and very difficult, but his transcendental consciousness was always predominant. He was not living in Manhattan consciousness, but was absorbed in dependence upon Krishna, just as when on the Jaladuta he had suffered his heart attacks. His reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita had supplied him the nectarine of life. He had already succeeded. Prabhupada says in one other place, even if one is not successful, actually, I will come back. In the following chapters, Dhruva Maharaj goes back home, back to Godhead. The self-effulgent Vaikuntha planets, by whose illumination alone all the illuminating planets within this material world give off reflected light, cannot be reached by those who are not merciful to other living entities. Only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuntha planets. So we just experienced, as a yatra and as with all the wonderful devotees who came from everywhere, all over the United States and even internationally, the effort it took to put on this glorious festival of Lord Jagannath. We were literally constantly engaged in welfare activities. Let us go back to Rath Yatra, San Francisco, 1970, which was the hugest festival to date in ISKCON. It was a huge procession all the way down to the beach. I think it was 3 or 4 miles, maybe even longer. And this was, the hippie movement was in full bloom, and there was the Family Dog Auditorium, which was one of the main places for the young people, the rock concerts, etc., etc. And there were like 20,000 people there. And Manu Dwees Prabhu was put in charge of the festival, and Prabhupada, at the end of the festival, was taking a short flight from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And Manu Dwees Prabhu took the opportunity to go down on his knees before Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the passenger seat of the car. The door was open, and he said, "Srila Prabhupada, did you like the festival?" And Srila Prabhupada very rarely used his body in physically hugging someone, a disciple, but at that time he gave him an incredible hug and was rubbing him up and down his back and his head. Said, "I loved it." One wonderful devotee, Bahulasta Prabhu, you can find his memory on Siddhanta Prabhu's Prabhupada Memories. He was on his departure bed. He was very sick when being interviewed. And he was witness to this. Not exactly his Prabhupada memory, but he's remembering how Prabhupada embraced Manu Dwees like this, and he started crying, telling the story. And Prabhupada later went on to say, "Why do we work so hard to put on such a festival? This is the compassion of the Vaishnava." Krishna, this is an excerpt from this purport. Only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuntha planets. A Krishna conscious being is always engaged in planning. That's using the mind. Manasi Seva. Real meditation. How to take all of suffering humanity back home, back to Godhead. Even if one is not successful in reclaiming all the fallen souls back to Godhead, still, because he is Krishna conscious, his path to Vaikuntha Loka is open. He personally becomes qualified to enter the Vaikuntha Lokas. And if anyone follows such a devotee, he also enters into Vaikuntha Loka. Prabhupada arrived in the Boston Harbor on the 18th of September, 1965, and this year they will celebrate the 60th anniversary of this glorious coming and landing here in the United States in Boston. They had a very big one 10 years ago for the 50th. Srila Prabhupada, he spoke the most beautiful prayers. Markini Bhāgavatam, and prayer to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Sri Śrimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very dear to Lord Ranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He is the great saintly spiritual master who bestows intense devotion to Krishna at different places throughout the world. So, from an empiric or, let's say, less informed position, one could say that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was not completely successful during the time he was so-calledly physically present. Here, Srila Prabhupada, this is 1965, this is some 29 years or so after the departure of the spiritual master, and understanding how very much his spiritual master is still present, and describing how he's the great saintly spiritual master who's bestowing intense devotion throughout the world. The Prabhupada gave all credit to his spiritual master. He glorified his disciples that you are the representatives of my spiritual master. You are the gift of my spiritual master. You have sent me. He directed you to take your birth in the Western countries so that when I came on his order, you would be there to assist me. Rameshwar Prabhu describes a letter that he received on behalf of all the Sankirtan devotees, that you were so wonderfully engaged that my spiritual master will bless you by so many unlimited multiplications over and over, and that is my satisfaction. By his strong desire, his spiritual master, the holy name of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout all the countries of the Western world, in all the cities, towns, and villages on the earth, from all the oceans, seas, rivers, and streams. Everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. It is predicted. They are already put to death by my will. Now you get up and fight, and you get the credit for winning this war. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions. We want Jagannath Rath Yatra, that type of standard in New York City, every single day. Just like myself and Vaishya Shekhar Prabhu, Archita, maybe, were you in 55th Street a little bit? Yes? Oh, okay. Anyway, Los Angeles just as good. That many devotees, it was very, very powerful. And of course, there's three very important things. The first one is location. The second thing is location. And the third thing is location. We're in Midtown Manhattan, and we just walk out the door, and boom, we're on Fifth Avenue or in Times Square. Didn't even have to take a taxi or subway. It was just walking distance. As the vast mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnava's desire is then fulfilled. So, in May of 1968, Srila Prabhupada's earliest devotees, Satsvarupa, Maharaj later, Jadharani, Pradyumna, and others came later, but they were the initial three, opened up a temple in Boston. And of course, Prabhupada spent the latter part of 1967 recovering his health. And Prabhupada even said this movement really got started and expanded in a big way when it came back from India at the very end of 1967, 1968. So Prabhupada spent the whole month of May in Boston. and he completely surprised the devotees by driving from the Boston temple, which at that time was in a place called Alston, a little bit west of what is Boston. And Boston is set up in such a way, the roads, that if you're not from there, you'll be completely lost and confused. But Prabhupada knew exactly how to get all the way from this locality, Alston, through downtown Boston, down to the waterfront, down to the Commonwealth Pier, where even the devotees who were living there didn't know how to get there. And Prabhupada walked on the Commonwealth Pier, revisiting this place. He saw unalloyed steel written on one warehouse. He remarked, "They have unalloyed steel, but we have unalloyed devotion." We want a certificate from Krishna that this man has done something for me. You know, and he said, if a pack of asses, or if the materialists, you know, think that we're great, like there's so many rich, famous, influential people because they give the people the sense gratification that they want. What is that? But if we please Krishna through purified senses, he had already succeeded. Certainly wanted to provide Radha and Krishna a temple in New York, but his success was that he was remembering Krishna even in New York City. When Priyavrata Maharaj was being, lack of a better word, lured by Narada Muni to give up being the son of Swayambhuva Manu, which meant that he would take over the emperorship of the entire universe so his father could retire. He's being trained up in Naistik Brahmacharya to become a sannyasa and become completely an renounced order of life. Swayambhuva Manu, oh boy, we got a crisis on our hands. He's not going to listen to me, my son. So he goes to the Pitamaha, Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma comes down, and Narada Muni is the son of Lord Brahma, so he has to listen to him also. Anyway, Prabhupada writes a purport in this regard that Priyavrata was encouraged that even though he will be engaged in be surrounded by so many material things and have so many responsibilities, still you will not be out of touch with devotional service. So Prabhupada, in the true sense of the word in that purport, brings it on home for all of us. That the devotees of ISKCON, they're living in big, big cities where the materialistic way of life is very, very predominant. He lists the cities, many of them, New York, Los Angeles, Stockholm, London, maybe some I forgot. He said, quite to the contrary of being affected by material influence, they are qualified for more and more association, which will be perpetual with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the prayer of Prahlad Maharaj, I see there are many saintly persons indeed. They take vows of silence and renunciation and going to the Himalayas, but this is all cheating. A devotee places himself in the busiest places of the world, which give one the greatest opportunity to propagate Krishna consciousness. Quality and quantity. Samkhya Purvaka Namagananati, by numerical strength. This is the result of the Christmas marathon. Double it. All right, you did it, you double it again, double it again. More. In the winter of 1965, 1966, whether the world recognized him or not, he was remembering Krishna. Not a day went by when he did not work on Krishna's book, Śrimad Bhāgavatam. Not a day went by when he did not offer food to Krishna and speak on Krishna's philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. And the chapter concludes, the chapter is entitled, "It will not be possible to assist you." So sometimes we become very discouraged, but under the shelter of Krishna, truly, when one door closes, is preparing us for a better and grander door to open. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost to him, and he is never lost to me. And Krishna assures his pure devotee that my devotee will never be vanquished. There was never any doubt about this for Srila Prabhupada. The only question was whether Americans would take notice of the pure devotee in their midst. At this point, it seemed that no one would take him seriously. The verse once again, translation. Anyone who thus engages in the devotional service of the Lord seriously and sincerely with his mind, words, and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If the devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation from the material world, he is awarded these results. Any questions or comments? Precious Shekhi, could you please enlighten us, or at least me, more? Add? Our primary sound man is absent at Dr. Phillips, so.
Well, he has the microphone. The microphone.
Just speak louder, we can have the microphone.
That's what we need to make.
You mentioned the legacy of Srila Prabhupada as his disciples carrying forth his mission and how valuable that is. And we see in you the same quality Prabhupada had as you were describing how he came and staked a claim here in New York City. That you've done something similar, or exactly the same, which is to stake a claim here, sat down in one place and chanted for over a decade. Or is it 2 decades? Huh? And I got great inspiration from this class. It fulfilled the meaning of the class about how Krishna fulfills the desires of his devotees, and then you made it very clear that the best kind of service is to sacrifice for the sake of others. And it made me aware also that we should embrace the verse, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim, Kalitamba Jagadisha Tamage. It gave new meaning to that for me this morning, considering that Krishna will fulfill any desire. The devotees don't want anything else except to assist in expanding the Sankirtan movement. So, to me, you embody that principle. Thank you for walking the earth, for keeping the mood of chastity to your spiritual master, and taking the simple process of Krishna consciousness as strictly as I've ever seen anybody take it. My obeisance is thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
You are very determined to touch as many devotees and people all over the world. You're going so many places, but humbly request you to maybe try to squeeze a little more time coming here during the year, if you can.
Hare Krishna Guru, thank you so much for the class. You mentioned, it was mentioned in the translation that if someone is engaged in devotional service, then all their desire, Lord blesses them with all their desires, even economic development or sense gratification.
They want it.
If they want it. But in first canto, 8th chapter, they say that Lord can be approached only by people who are purified of material desire.
So therefore, we have to be very careful. Krishna, he's actually inclined to hand out economic development, sense gratification. Okay, take and now go away. Don't disturb me. So, in the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, now take a benediction for me. He said, I am not a merchant. This is not our relationship.
Rama,
Yeah.
I'd like just to give a verse. In the 5th canto of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, there's a verse in which Krishna says, Satyam dishati artitam artitam nirnam naivartatavya puna artito yata swayam vidite vachatam nichatam icha dhanam ichapadapalavam. That if a devotee is engaged in devotional service, asks me for material benedictions, Krishna says, I will fulfill his desires, but I'll do it in such a way that he won't ask for them anymore. And instead, I'll give him my lotus feet. So it's Krishna's protection for the devotees who are sincerely trying, even if they have some material desire, mistakenly ask for the wrong thing. As is paraphrased in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, Krishna is saying through the pen of Kaviraj Goswami, this person may be a fool, but I'm not a fool. Therefore, although he's asking me to drink poison, I will substitute that and give him instead my devotional service.
Prabhupada says in one place that for devotional service, to be rewarded in material things, in most people is very prominent. So we see like big festival days in holy places in India, you know, throngs and throngs of people are coming, like Vrindavan, and it's like overwhelming. You know, what are they actually, are they coming for devotional service, or in a praying mandir next door, you know, like spiritual Disneyland with their own colors and all that. Actually, you know, people, the devotees, the Krishna Bhava Mandir devotees, they'll ask people who are coming, you know, do you go to praying mandir? We went there once, that was enough. But when we come to Vrindavan, we come here all the time because the kirtan is just so ecstatic.
Hare Krishna, Rama, thank you for another enlightening class. This last question is very important because sometimes even in ISKCON we misunderstand, especially those coming from India, not to pick on you, but there's this understanding that if you're really a sadhu, you're really advanced in spirituality, then you have to be poor. But Prabhupada said no. He said there's so many foolish swamis in India. He said this one time. And people bring money to them and they say, no, I don't touch money. Prabhupada said, no, give me. Yes. Why? Because I know what to do with the money. So we see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, his Leela, that he had devotees at every strata of society. Kolava Sridhar, practically nothing. Partha Paruja Maharaj, everything. So we should be confused. We don't misjudge that if a devotee has money, he must be doing something materially. No. Krishna is in control of everything and everyone. And he plans everybody's activity. So some devotees, like our own Ambarish, so much money, and what is he doing with it? Building TOBP and so many other things. And then there are other devotees, very little money, but they still give to Krishna. So that's the test. We're tested extremely two ways. Everything is going well, good health, a lot of money, but you still come and serve. Or the other way, you're nothing, your health is falling apart, you have no money. Generally, when we're in that position, we pray, Krishna, help me. So the other extreme is actually a bigger test. When you're successful, you have so much money, your health is good, and everything is good family-wise, business-wise, do you still, from the heart, serve Krishna?
Okay, anyone else? Harinam Prabhu. Harinam Prabhu is doing very amazing service for many years of his life, expanding the Sankirtan movement all over the world. So, very happy to have his association now.
It always amazes me, Prabhupada's determination. It's inconceivable. So many failed attempts, but never gave up. In my own spiritual life, I face obstacles trying to perform my service to my spiritual master. And from those difficulties, I feel like I'm doing the same service but more half-hearted. Feeling that I'll face the same difficulty again. So how to conquer over that, I guess, excuse to do a service half-hearted. That makes sense.
Unfortunately, I didn't hear so
sorry.
distinctly because of the...
So much echo. I'll come closer. It's easy without the mic.
Speak louder.
So Prabhupada, he never gave up, despite
Right.
difficulties. In my spiritual life, I faced difficulties performing service. I was able to continue my service, but I feel like each time I face a difficulty, I do the same service in a half-hearted way, not with so much fire or enthusiasm. So how to get over that excuse of like doing it half-hearted and maybe trying to, put more into the service.
Krishna's giving us the opportunity to deepen our determination and resolve. But my experience, when you're faced with something that is just so overwhelmingly discouraging, if you take association with devotees who are very much inspired in their service and are very, very sincere, like it's described in the verse here today, sincere, serious, then that will help you in your situation individually. That's one of the glories of association with devotees. Each of us is different. Each of us has our own different, unique personality and expression of Krishna, a different angle or point of view. But devotees who are, what is Prabhupada says in one place, that if one becomes liberal in their social dealings, then you can really, really help others very nicely. So, Srila Prabhupada has given such an amazing formula of pure devotional service that everyone can accept. So other devotees of Srila Prabhupada, other persons who are, of similar, is a Sanskrit term, of similar caste, we make friendship with them. And that will help us in those times. That's my experience. But one thing, what does Srila Bhakti say? One who is favored by God finds his path beset with thorns. And it's actually being recorded for the future glorification of the devotee. Just like we're reading in Srila Prabhupada's struggles. In Broadway, they had these benches in the middle, and that's where he met when Prabhupada was living in the Upper West Side. We pointed out such a bench, which could have actually been the place where Prabhupada met that Mr. Rubin and said there were temples filled up with devotees and books. They are there, but time is separating me from. So we're serving such an incredible personality as Srila Prabhupada whose faith is just Mount Everest, is the topmost. So if we always take shelter from Srila Prabhupada personally, express our heart, our desire. You hear the memories of Prabhupada, the memoirs and realizations of Prabhupada's disciples, and never feel alone, that Prabhupada is always there with me. And the grandfather is even more kind than the father. Where is it? I believe it's 9th chapter, 2nd canto. Answers by citing the Lord's version. If one wants the actual message, one should not think oneself as advanced as Lord Rama to be directly initiated by Krishna's flute song. But if one wants the actual message, one should approach the current link in the Sampradaya. One who is the servant of the servant so many more times removed is even more advanced. So the living association of devotees who are actually engaged in trying to fulfill, when will Srila Rupa Goswami was established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet. It's very wonderful by Shisheka Prabhu when you give initiation, you say, following the eternal principle of parampara. Eternal principle. Completely transcendental to all time, place, and circumstance considerations. By offering obeisance to the feet of these 6 Goswamis, all obstacles to devotion are destroyed, and my real desire is fulfilled. Everyone's walking around thinking I'm desiring this, that. All illusion, not their real self. So we're always looking to find what is the real desire in myself and others. Raya, Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai. Gauri Tanai ki jai. Vanchik opportunities, Thank you very much.
Jai.